So, having just listened together to that clip of Mac talking, I wanted to do a little piece sort of to support us receiving the children's fire. So if you just find your way with what I'm doing, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and just feel inside yourself. So it's really good if you get comfortable for perhaps half an hour or something. But if you need to shift position, just please feel free to, but just do it as quietly as you can so that you don't distract other people. But don't hold a stiff position if you're feeling uncomfortable. You can move. And like I said upstairs, it's really fine if you're tired and you fall asleep. That's not a problem. Just some part of you may be listening. So in this inner reflection, I'm going to invite us to visualize, in a way, sort of visualize this fire as a thread which goes through the generations. So looking back and a little bit looking forward. So the generations who came before us and the generations yet to come. And just inviting us all to relate to the question of time and the passing of time with a really open attitude. So, even as Einstein says, time's relative. Time isn't necessarily what it looks like from a rational mind. Just open to the possibility that it's all happening now, in this moment with this breath. So just inviting you to notice this breath, this breathing that's happening right now without us needing to do it. Somehow we're participating, but the impetus that draws the breath in and then releases the air again isn't us deliberately doing it. We don't have to decide to breathe. So the breath is happening. And just bringing your attention very simply to notice this movement that's keeping us alive, that's happening quite effortlessly. And every time you notice that your attention's just wandered off somewhere else, don't make that wrong in any way, but just in the moment of noticing, just invite yourself to notice your breathing again. So that you just keep cycling your attention back to this simple movement of breathing. This simple, beautiful, mysterious movement of breathing that's very, very ordinary because it's happening all the time. But it's also extraordinary because it's happening and we're participating, but we're not doing it. So although it's very, very ordinary, it's also the mystery, the mysterious. Embodied in each of us. Just like this. So this is, if you like, your home base, just how you find yourself, and just inviting yourself to bring your attention to your breathing, and maybe the sense of substance of having a body, so the weight, the feeling of where your body touches the sofa or the floor or the cushions, and the surfaces of your body touching the surfaces of the chair, and the feeling of slight pressure where gravity pulls your weight down. And just noticing that you have substance. And over again, noticing that breathing is happening. And you're here without having to do anything. So some of us will personally know that strength of love for our children. Those of us that have children, either still young children or children that have grown into adults, will know the strength of that love very personally that Mac's story pointed to, that the chiefs in Mac's story observed. And some of us may be step-parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles. Others might feel a strong affinity with children. Maybe we've chosen to work with children or just live near children, and some of us may be just over the threshold from being a child ourselves. But whatever our current connection with children, we all have been children. We all have parents or guardians. And whatever we may not like about our current consumer culture, whatever stresses and strains it puts on us, however we are conscious of the imbalances that come with valuing productivity above everything else, all of us here benefit from the privilege that our culture gives us. All of us are able to take time, like now, for reflection, for healing. We all have our basic needs met. We all have food and shelter, companionship, water, clean water. We don't need to spend a whole day doing the washing anymore. We just put it in a machine and let it do while we're doing something else. And in so many ways, our industrialized culture, the good side of that, the upside of our industrialized, developed culture is that we have time to choose what we do over and above us meeting our survival needs. So we have this time available for this healing that's very precious and very particular and very new in the stream of time. So I see this as a really exciting time, with great opportunity for healing. And I'm reminded of what the speaker who came to Embercombe last autumn, Pat McCabe, that some of us heard speak here, what she said about just realigning ourselves just by even 1 degree. If I just move 1 degree around from where I'm facing, if I slightly change where I'm facing, even by 1 degree, by the time I've walked in a straight line a mile, that's going to end me up in quite a different place from if I just hadn't made that change. So just even making a really tiny adjustment to our own integrity in this moment might have really unmeasurable implications in the future, further down the line. It might have more effect than we can guess or realise. So just as you're sitting here listening to my voice and resting into your body and into your being, just like to invite you to imagine your parents standing behind you, one on each side, so one behind each shoulder, your father and your mother. And as you do that, just let yourself notice how you feel. Whether there's a tension that comes with that, a sense of tension in you, or whether you feel relaxed. Just notice. Whether you feel support when you visualize your parents behind you, or a lack of support. Whether you feel neglected or interfered with. Whether you want to shrug them off or whether you like them standing behind you. Try not to judge yourself or them. Just receive and be curious and open to notice how it is. With your father and your mother standing behind you in your imagination right now. And just breathe, notice and breathe. And really don't make yourself or them wrong. If you feel distance or like you don't want them there, try not to make them wrong, and don't make yourself wrong. If you feel angry or if you feel grief or sadness, just let yourself feel the textures of those feelings right now, with your breath just coming and going, supported by what you're sitting on and the sense of substance of your body. Or if on the other hand you feel joy or closeness, warmth or protection when you imagine your parents there, just let yourself receive that. Feel the comfort. Again, just notice the feelings. Let's keep bringing your attention to the way that breath is happening. Whatever you're feeling, the breath is coming and going. And just remember your body, your arms and legs, your torso just sitting here. And just keep allowing whatever comes. Maybe there's thoughts that arise, just allow them. And just every now and then just re-visualize your parents standing behind you. And now just imagine your parents' standing behind each of your parents. So, your grandparents. So behind your father, there's his mother and his father. And behind your mother, there's her father and her mother. Maybe you knew them, maybe you can actually picture them, or maybe you've seen photos. But if not, you just imagine them. And again, just let yourself observe and feel the atmosphere as you do that. Like, how does your body feel? What do you notice in your body as you imagine your parents and your grandparents behind you? And again, you may feel qualities of support or lack of support, negligence or interference and the effects of that, or other emotions, and just anything that you notice, just see if you can just allow that and keep coming back to the freshness of the breath in this moment, just coming and going. Maybe just include now an awareness of the context in which your grandparents lived their lives. So maybe the social conditions, maybe they lived through one of the world wars, or both of the world wars. Maybe they were affected by communism. All the strains of that era, that social context. You can imagine your grandparents giving birth to your parents and having them around as little children. Just give yourself time to picture that a little bit. Picture the world that they were living in, the time that they were living in. And just include any of your aunts and uncles, so any of your parents' siblings. Just imagine them there too, with your grandparents. And you're here just now, just breathing, just allowing any feelings and thoughts with this invitation. And now imagine that behind each of your 4 grandparents are standing their parents. So now there are 8 separate adults, your great-grandparents, standing behind your grandparents. So there's your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents. 8 adults there. And picture that era and the country that they lived in, if you know, and maybe it's several countries, including anything you know about the context of their lives or their jobs, how old they lived to, anything you know about your great-grandparents. Just include that. And just give yourself time to notice how your body feels now as you sit here. So imagining yourself like the tip of an arrow which spreads out behind you to widen out to include these 8 adults. coming through space and time to this moment, to this particular breath that's never going to happen again. This breath that we're each breathing now is never going to happen again. And just imagine this being like the moving tip of an arrow, the stream of life that's broadening out behind you. And just keep returning to the breath. Aerating any sensations that are coming into your body right now. And then, even though it probably gets a little vaguer with each generation back, just imagine, let yourself imagine standing behind your great-grandparents, their parents, so their father and mother, behind each of those 8 adults. So there's now your great-grandparents, your great-great-grandparents behind them. There's 16 of them. Born probably 100 years ago or more. 16 adults standing there in this broadening arrow that ends up as you and you breathing this moment. That's 4 generations back now. And then one more generation back, 5 generations back, there are 32 adults standing there. You can't really picture them all, I'm sure, but you can have a sense of that quantity of 32 of your ancestors standing behind you 100 or 150 years ago. And then behind them, 6 generations back, 64 adults. All related to you. "64 adults contributing to your DNA, your very particular body structure. And then 7 generations back, now it's 128. 128 adults. Really broad arrowhead, tail of the arrow coming into this very precise head. A broad arrow tail. 128 adults across 7 generations coming to you. Now just picture or feel yourself, if you can, as the tip of this arrow, the living current, beating heart of this stream of life, human life. From these 128 people that you're related to. Each time, in each generation, each time that a child was born and raised to physical maturity, old enough to themselves reproduce, there must have been enough resources for that child to make it through childhood. So there must have been a lot of care and finding food and water and shelter, to allow each generation to reach physical maturity. And although emotional maturity isn't a given, they must have at least had their basic needs met to get to adulthood, to get old enough to have given birth to the next generation. There must have been adequate food and shelter and warmth. But perhaps conditions were hard. It's quite likely that at times in those 7 generations, people feared for their survival. It's very likely that things weren't necessarily easy along the way. And almost certainly there wasn't much time for reflection. Almost certainly those lives would have been occupied by fulfilling basic needs. But each adult, at least each mother, even if the father wasn't available, but probably each adult experienced the miracle of a child being born. So each adult in that generation, each generation would have experienced in the moment of giving birth, or in the moment of being around their newborn baby, that extraordinary, ordinary miracle of life coming through, life miraculously happening, growing, and a new being being born. Each of those mothers carried the child in her womb and would have felt that moment when the heart started beating, would have felt that extraordinary miracle where life is happening. New life is being grown, like almost as naturally as breathing happening, without necessarily there being a choice. So each of those generations would have experienced this miracle that even now science can't explain, how the first heart started beating, how life, what started, what life is about, how or even why we're here. And just take another moment to feel your own heart beating now. The pulse in your body, which you're not doing. When we're in the womb, when we were developing in our mother's womb, when apparently the heartbeat is the first thing that starts, and then around that the body forms. So somehow this coming together of substance and spirit creates a heartbeat that we then live around, that we then, our body forms around. And just take a moment to feel that continuity of this beating heart, that again, like the breath, we're not doing. And if you're open to that, just allow yourself to again appreciate, as if for the first time, the mystery of that. Just feel it, that it's happening inside your body right now, unexplained. And now I'd like to invite you to consider that each and every one of the ancestors, so the generations that you visualized behind, did the best that they could, given the resources and the information available to them. So just like you invite you to consider that they did the best that they could to raise their child well, given the resources and information they had. And consider that they may very well have had less resources and information than we do. Perhaps, and even probably, they had more simplicity and more connection to the simple rhythms of life itself, and to the mystery, and to the land, and to family or community. They may well have had more simplicity than we know. But they're very likely to have had less personal time, less time for reflection, less information. And just consider the imprints of their lives going into their DNA, so literally into their structure, into their attitudes and values, and the experiences of their lives, each of those 7 generations behind, the experiences of their lives which may have been simpler, but may have been harder. The energetic imprints being held in their subtle energetic bodies, their etheric bodies, and affecting even their physical bodies, being passed down the generations to each of us. Maybe influencing our bone structures and our shapes of our bodies. The kind of hair and skin we have. The height, weight we are. So something that we're really not in control of, but yet showing up very personally in us, the inheritance of those simpler but harder times. And just inviting us to imagine or consider that each generation really did its best for its children, with the strength of that love that mammals feel for their young. So this cocktail that's passed down of fears and loves and secrets and guilt and shame and sorrow, wisdom and intelligence, suppressions or repressions, anger, ignorance, hope, humility, joy, surrender, just this cocktail of imprints. Like threads in a rich tapestry, or a rich braid of lots of different shades of colour, lots of threads woven together, building our DNA shaping our brains and our bodies as in the movement of evolution. Each one did the best that they could given the resources and information available to them. And if you like, you can even just widen that source from which each of us originates beyond the 128 adults of the previous 7 generations, which very personally lead to our lives. Beyond that, waves back more and more adults from eons ago. More than you can see more than you can see in your mind's eye, just spreading right back and maybe blurring into non-human creatures. Apes or even fish, or however you view it, just way back to early life forms. Way back, even beyond recognizable creatures, to simple organisms. In this movement of evolution, this very real movement of evolution that leads us to this point in time, and this beating heart, and this breath, that is very, very personally felt. If we're here for it with our attention, if we bring our awareness into our direct experience, if we let life touch us, it's happening right now, nowhere else. And now, if you have children, or think that one day you will have children, you can imagine yourself joining with your partner or ex-partner, the other parent of your child or children, or other parents, and meeting. Just imagine that you're meeting their vast, broad arrow with yours, and both those vast arrows are joining at this moment in your child. So it's like even more double joining in front of you in your child. And there's, if you have more than one child, then there's several new arrowheads in front of you, passing through you and beyond, passing on this multicoloured thread that reaches back and back and back, passing through the trail of your life and all the lives of your ancestors before you. And if you do have a child, or have had a child, or have been around somebody who's just given birth and seen a newborn, just reconnect for a moment with that feeling of what it's like to see a very new human. And the way in which the potency of life is so obvious, the being that's here. the resilience of being that comes through. It seems like against all the odds, and starts breathing out here, away from the mother's body. And just allow yourself again to reconnect with that sense of mystery of life happening, the unknown, the invisible force of life, the life which includes for all of us the certainty of death. And the potential of death at any moment, even the next moment, for any of us. Feeling both the resilience of the force of life and the fragility, the inevitability of death. So if there's any sense of protectiveness in you at the memory or the image of newborn life, just let yourself feel the protectiveness in you. And maybe it's towards an animal you love. The same thing is evoked if you don't have a child or haven't been around a child that you feel that close to. And just open to your awareness to the sense in you of their essential being that was already intact the day they were born. The kind of spirit, or whatever words you use, for that spark of life that's already intact, even before they've learnt how to live their life or how to behave as a human or a social behaviour. And how the fragility and the immaturity of a young baby also evokes this care and this desire to protect and nurture. So let yourself feel both. The strength of their essential being, newborns' essential being, and the fragility of the humanness, which needs guidance to develop to maturity. The practical reality of this very dependent child when they're born, who needs someone else to find food, to clean it, to hold it, to keep it warm, to give it enough fluids to drink. And also needs emotional guidance. And now just look back again to imagine your parents behind you again, just standing there, and just feel how it is now, just to imagine them standing behind you. And just any ways in which you may feel unseen by them, or ignored, or misunderstood, or undervalued, over-focused on perhaps, or smothered, pushed or invaded, or any ways in which you feel you weren't treated as you would have liked to have been treated. Those really are here for us now to resolve as adults. Those feelings are here for us to just breathe through. Now we're the adults. So, with that protective love that you might feel for a newborn child, just invite you right now to feel that for any aspects of yourself that feel like they weren't held. So just inside yourself, just have a sense of both the really loving, protective adult that you know yourself you can be, and also this very, perhaps these aspects of yourself that didn't feel you were treated well. And just let those two aspects of yourself, if you like, be in relationship. Just let your own sense of yourself as an adult be the champion for that, any depleted states you're aware of when you visualize your parents behind you. As adults, we can choose to find other people to help us, to mirror us in our strengths. So any areas that we don't feel we were given quite what we needed by our parents, now as adults we can consciously choose to find people who support us, to help us find healthy limits for ourselves, good role models, other adults who can help us to value our essential being and to learn in any areas what we'd like to have been taught by our parents. We can choose to surround ourselves by people that make us feel good about ourselves. And we can consciously choose to step in and be a champion for ourselves. Give ourselves positive affirmations. And again, just returning to remember that each of our parents did the best that they could given the resources available to them, which, if you look back generation by generation by generation, probably were less and less and less advanced in some ways. So each generation is being raised in the best way that it could have been by the previous generation. And where there's still a sense of lack or depletion, it's up to us now not to blame, not to look back with blame, just to look back up the line, back up through the thread, through those generations, and just breathe through any contractions we feel, any hurts we still feel. And release those previous generations from our blame and our resent. Just set them free from a sense that they didn't do enough, and treasure what they did give us that led us to this moment, and assume that they did the best they could given the resources they had. And just let yourself feel how it is to be alive now, having the freedom that we have, the comfort, the community, the friendship, the circle that we're in right now. The ease just to drift off and come back when you're ready. The invitation to reflect. The capacity to have this much awareness of our own feelings. And just afresh, just see if it's possible to appreciate how life is getting itself here just like this, in each of us, as each of us. This is how life is showing up. This is how spirit is manifesting. Just like this, and we have this incredible potential of this generation, these generations that we are now, alive, with so much consciousness, with so much awareness, with such capacity. Relatively intelligent, relatively well-resourced, relatively free, at least in this country. So without any sense of guilt or shame or blame or resent, just feeling the potential that we have, and the awakeness that we share, the potency of our time. And all we need to do is to notice and allow each sensation and each experience that we're having just to be here. Each thought, each feeling, without letting it run us, but giving it the space of our bodies, the space and the movement of our breathing, to just let it be felt with an allowing, with an allowance, with a welcoming. So being conscious is being aware, and being responsible is having enough emotional space to be able to choose our responses, to not pop off in reactivity. And if love is unrestricted feeling, and fear is holding, and love is really letting everything be as it is and staying awake and responding. So I'd just like to end with inviting us to pass gratitude back up the line, up this inherited line, as a kind of the other side of the children's fire, looking forward, just to pass a sense of gratitude back up the line. and bring it to this moment. So bring it to a sense of gratitude for what we share, what we have right now. Whatever the immediacy of our particular felt experiences right now. So whatever we're feeling, just to include a sense of gratitude that it's okay right now. So when you're ready, if you just like to open your eyes and just look around and just have a sense of the community, the connection that is just here, that we find ourselves in, each of us, these points, these tips of each of our arrows come together here, right now. And just to allow a sense of gratitude to come through. Thank you. Thank you all. I hope you had a nice rest. Some of you. If nothing else, I had a nice restful time speaking to you all. Thank you. You really don't need to say anything, but if you would like to say anything, it'd be lovely for me to hear anything. But it's really okay if you just would like to digest it or not share with me now or not share with me ever. But there's space and time. It's 3:45. If anybody would like to share.
So I notice I struggle with the assumption that my parents did their best given the resources they had.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be with it, it's fine, and I take care of those places that weren't met.
Yes.
I know that's my responsibility.
Yes.
But it's a strong one.
Yes.
The assumption that everyone who went before did their best.
Yes.
They certainly made choices.
Yes.
Whether they were the best choices for me,
yes,
I would question that.
Yes.
And I think the Children's Fire speaks of the fact that we are not necessarily doing that.
Yes.
Which is why we're now, which is why we keep relighting the Children's Fire.
Yes.
Because we're not doing the best that we could be doing with the given resources that we have. And I'm also with the fact that the other day Grace received a book from my father in Australia. It was given to his mother. So Grace's great-grandmother was given a book by her grandfather. So basically Grace got a book from her grandfather. It was given to his mother by her grandfather.
Amazing.
And Grace, when we sat down and worked out that this book was first given by Grace's great-great-great-grandfather,
Beautiful.
she really got it.
Yeah.
And something that, she has a great-grandmother alive, so she can go back an extra generation at most. To go back that far, suddenly she lit up.
Magic.
It was really tangible, that link going further back.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
It was all about English flowers, identifying flowers. English flowers. So that opened up the ancestors for both of us.
Beautiful. And what you said in the first bit is, I think it's really important to always add in, given the resources and information that they had, and also that maybe it wasn't the best choice for you. But then, as you say, you struggle with that, and the struggle is something that you're actually able to orient around. It's like you can actually heal that if you're willing to feel what that struggle is and deepen into that and get the support you need. But the assumption that they did the best they could given the information they had is going back to what Max speaks of in that in his story, that the chiefs of the indigenous people noticed when they looked at the natural world that it's natural for the mammals to give to their young, and when that's out of balance, there's something that those adult mammals weren't getting. So that given they would have done more if they'd had more resources, and then that's how it passes back down. Probably their parents hadn't given them. So it's like, although it's very challenging, my invitation is to just sow the...
I accept all of that. It's just that's where I land with it.
Yes.
You know, biologically,
Yes.
I'm alive and I'm here.
Yes.
That's a given. And emotionally, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had to return from that.
Yes.
So it's all a gift.
Yes.
But that's because I'm here.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I would not necessarily be able to say that from a place. And I know, you know,
Yes. I
accepting
agree.
what is essential for me. That it's not supposed to have been different or be different.
Beautiful. Yeah.
You know, and in some ways, the inclusion of the children's fire, in some ways, is just another inclusion. You don't even need to necessarily have more than that.
My invitation there is just to kind of almost upgrade the acceptance to gratitude, because that has a different quality, and it's just
gratitude towards. Yeah. I mean, I can appreciate that.
because it opens our hearts, and I feel what I'm in touch with is that this coming through the heart is going to have such an effect on us creating the world of our longing, which we feel in our hearts. And the difference in my heart when I'm accepting and grateful is quite strong, quite tangible.
Yeah. I feel that in some ways maybe we need to be exactly where we are, our relation to the children's fire, to be able to return to a tangible place.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Or definitely.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Also say I appreciate it. Both having seen the video,
Yes.
which was like very in a nutshell, like an essential message.
Yes.
Powerful.
Yes.
And then also gratitude for your bringing this day,
Thank you.
giving authorization. I'm sorry for my snoring.
No, you're no need to be sorry. Your snoring was welcome.
And even though it was like in a state of in-between, I think it goes through.
Yes,
What went
yes.
through for me it's powerful. It's like an awareness moment, and I like that going back and looking forward.
Yeah.
So it's powerful and nice. I think to
Thank you.
So, especially for me now that I'm going to become a grandfather
Yes.
next month.
Congratulations. You beat me.
Emotional. So yeah, it's emotional because that gift now, especially, I've done that kind of work in many different ways, and I really like it. This was a new one, so. And yeah, it brings me back to the importance of that transmission, right? With
Yes.
whatever means, knowledge, resources, linked, and
Yes.
we have. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. How?
When we were in Hungary, the last meeting we had, Julie asked us something we were proud of. And in that occasion, I said that I was proud of my parents
Oh.
because of what they did, despite I would say the poor method they had in terms of knowledge or in terms of possibility to educate three sons, one daughter, two sons, and after that I realized that also in this idea of the children's fire, that the struggle or the difficulty I may have in educating, in being a parent, is one maybe because I decide to put this fire in the middle, while for them and for their parents it was natural, as you were saying.
Yes.
And so it's something, it was natural to have this attitude, even if you can consider now that some manner of education was not proper, but for them it was natural. And so children are a gift and they are in the center. While I and my wife and so on decide to, and when you decide to, it means that somewhere it's not really so natural. And so there is this sort of distance. We decide to put it in the middle, but because it's out of. And so there is this sort of distance. And then the second thing is that I realize that the difficulty I can have is fighting in being a parent, in educating, is the same I have in being a son now. And so I would say also educating my parents, because they are in a period of their life in which it's hard for them. I see it's hard for them. It's not hard for them, but I think that for them it's an hard period. And I and my brother and my sister had to build a new relation with them, and I think that in this line, from being a son but having also a role in educating them, and being a parent and having a role in educating my son and my daughter, there is something in which I had to find the balance. Because really there is this flow, and it's not easy. But it's what you were proposing now, it's really the essential. So,
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you.
yesterday we were saying that the childhood has been exactly the best period of my life, is the best period of my life. The childhood, yes. We were saying that with Jeff and yesterday evening.
Wonderful.
Well, memory, it was slightly different. I have good memories of it, but it's not the best.
I would say to me it's the best, and remembering that, yes, it's useful to say thank you to my parents and use that now to thank them.
Beautiful.
As we were saying with Susie, I still haven't said to my father or to my mother thank you for that.
Oh,
Not it.
yes.
Yes.
Great. Yes. One thing I love about opening my mind to time and space and a new way of feeling time and space is I've spoken to my dead father, I've spoken to my dead grandparents, and those I don't even know, and somehow it feels like it reaches something, even though those people aren't here anymore. I love that. Feels real. It's like this invisible. It's not visible, but yet it feels real. It reminds me of you speaking of the invisible. It's like, yes. somehow, on another dimension.
I found that very powerful. I find it right now very powerful. This sense of here we are all sitting, all these tribes and the two tribes that came together, and it's like different notes or different, and it's not like just a kind of history story of names in a book, which I know some of those, my family tree, okay, no, but there's something just extraordinary that I felt that touched me really, really deeply. Of the song, the note of these throughout all the ages behind me and behind all of this, these hearts beating, this life song happening. And such a sense of, before you even said feel grateful, it was just this extraordinary feeling of gratitude of that life, and also just I could map them all out, going back to generations. I could sense them all here, and I could go and feel in my body. I felt, and I had that in it. It's like I know the stories, and there's some that I don't know the stories, and they have different senses, and all of them, and it's all rippling through me, and every one of us have that rippling through us, and here we are, and here it is meeting with partners and with the young ones, and there's this thing of the ability in the past to reflect, and that kind of like it's just a stream that's coming up, but available in it through existence, and some of us have taken it, and some in society haven't, but it's irrelevant because it is doing this, and it's just extraordinary. Just extraordinary. And we try out all the different rituals of these things to name something that is just happening.
Yes.
And it's so beautiful to name it and then wrestle with the words of and the competencies. My parents hadn't that, my grandparents certainly didn't. One of my great-grandfathers did, the other one didn't, and they all have these different competency of the heart, of the mind, emotional intelligence, going back, and this one back here I could take you to, he had a great connection with the heart, and this one here was just not so, and it's all throughout, here and going forward. Just amazing. It's really, really beautifully named.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's 2 minutes to 4, so maybe it's good that we close. Thank you all. Thank you.